Support for Trifles comes from listeners like you, who support us through Patreon and Substack. Bonus material, thank you gifts, and more await at patreon.com/trifles and at trifles.substack.com. And now you can enjoy some Trifles swag, mugs, notepads, and oval stickers, available in our store. Find it at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise.
Welcome to Trifles, a weekly podcast about the Sherlock Holmes stories.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Yes, the box was cardboard, the detective was dying, and the bridge was Thor, but there are so many other details to pick apart in the stories.
Pray, be precise as to details.
Have you ever stopped to wonder why James Phillimore disappeared looking for his umbrella? Or just how parsley can manage to sink into the butter?
You are very inquisitive, Mr. Holmes.
It is my business to know what other people don't know.
Scott Monty and Bert Wolder will have the answers to these questions and more in Trifles.
The game's afoot.
Episode 499. Who was Barker? Well, hello there, and welcome to Trifles, the Sherlock Holmes podcast, where we get into the minutiae in the Sherlock Holmes stories. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Wolder.
And Bert, are you barkering up the wrong tree today?
As usual, yes, I am indeed barkering up the wrong tree.
Oh, well, today we have, this is kind of an interesting episode. It was spurred on, I think, by a suggestion from Kai Johansson, who wondered about Barker, Holmes's hated rival. And as a matter of fact, we found a piece of Sherlockian scholarship that gets into this a little bit. A piece by a guy named William P. Schweikert. So we're going to start the show by telling you a little bit about Bill Schweikert, his background, his association with the Sherlockian community. And then we'll talk about Barker and some other irregulars, small I irregulars. And we'll conclude with a very unique, and well, not very unique. I mean, unique is itself very. So a unique contribution to the Sherlockian lore by Bill Schweikert himself with a special guest appearance. So you'll want to stay tuned for that toward the end of the episode. Meanwhile, we would like to remind you that you can support the show in a number of ways. We have Patreon, we have Substack, and we have our merch store. So if there is something that you would like to do to support the show, you can do it either monetarily for less than $1 a month over on Patreon. You can choose the annual option or the monthly option. Participate for as many or as few months at a time as you like. And the same thing with Substack. We encourage you to go ahead and register on those sites. You'll get all the free stuff that anyone can see, but we do reserve the shows as ad-free for our paying members. Yes, that's right. If you don't want to listen to the annoying ads that happen at various points throughout, we shouldn't say annoying, the necessary ads that help us keep this show afloat, then you can join either one of those communities to avoid those. And of course, you can buy a Trifles mug or a Trifles notepad through our merch store, and that helps support the show as well. So go ahead and check those out. We have links in the show notes, or just go to SherlockHolmesPodcast.com and find the links there. Okay, we trudge our way into a little bit of history here, Bert. We were discussing before the show Bill Schweikert, William P. Schweikert, BSI. And we had to hunt a little bit to kind of dredge some stuff up. And you did manage to find Bob Tomlin's very touching terrace, the obituary in the Baker Street Journal, which really helps us to understand little bit more about who Bill Schweikert was. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, is because this is another part of the fun of Sherlockian scholarship. One thing you can do is, come up with a question or a topic like Kai Johansson's done and say, gee, I wonder who Barker was. Barker is a character in the Cases of Sherlock Holmes whom Holmes refers to as his hated rival on the Surrey shore. But who exactly was he? Well, we found this paper by Bill Schweikert, and we know the name Bill Schweikert. But Scott and I have been talking for a while and decided, let's find out a little bit more about Bill Schweikert. Well, Bill Schweikert was a member of the Three Garadabs. He was invested in 1979 as Cox and Company. He was a bank manager. He lived in Westchester. And among his hobbies, he was an amateur historian and archaeologist, and he was a specialist in the Battle of White Plains, 1776, the Battle of White Plains. He knew all about General William Howe's campaign that ended in the defeat there for the British. And he went to Revolutionary War backgrounds in his spare time. He discovered all sorts of artifacts. And today, I think the Garadebs have an award in Bill Schweikert's memory that continues. And he did write, the very famous poem Scott just referred to as Long Evening with Holmes. But Bob Tomlin, when Bill Schweikert passed away, Bob Tomlin, who sadly also left us, wrote this quite remarkable obituary for Bill Schweikert, which we did wanted to share with you. Tomlin wrote, on Tuesday, the 12th of December, 1995, one of the dearest men I've ever known succumbed to cancer. Bill Schweikert was a man whom everybody loved and admired. He was a brilliant Sherlockian scholar, a dynamic leader, a mentor to countless Scion members, an old-world gentleman, and the finest friend for which a man could ask. His loss is particularly grievous for me, as we worked together for 12 years on the Three Garadeb Scion Society, and we both looked forward to those bi-monthly planning sessions, which we both missed enormously after we stepped down. His literary works graced the pages of the Baker Street Journal and a host of other publications. His presentations at Scion meetings showed how creative and clever his sense of humor was. His poem, A Long Evening with Holmes, that's read at the close of every Garadeb meeting, ranks with Starrett's 221B as the very best in Sherlockian poetry. But it was the casual warmth he exuded toward everyone that made him so popular. When my wife, Teresa, was named the woman in 1994, it was Bill whom she asked to be her escort. He was genuine. What you saw was what you got. And what you got was a warm, understanding, loving man who liked one and all and got back love in return. He leaves his wife, Eleanor, who was the woman in 1984, 2 daughters, several grandchildren, a legion of Sherlockians who were privileged to know and love him. But none more than I shall miss him more than I can say. He was truly the best and the wisest man I've ever known. And that's what Bob Tomlin wrote in 1995 about Bill Schweikert.
That's just lovely. Lovely. And we'll have a little bit more from Bob, as we said, at the end of the show. So this is a perfect opportunity to turn to the pages of the BSJ and take a look at the overlooked irregular that Bill Schweikert wrote in, I guess this was volume 43, number 2, June of 1993. And he mentioned that as omnipotent as Sherlock Holmes is to us, he needed help from time to time. And of course, he had Watson as his right arm, thank goodness. But he wasn't a full-fledged fan of Watson from time to time. He reminds us that he disparaged Watson's assistance. It's in a case of identity, he said, "You've really done very well indeed. It's true, you've missed everything of importance." But he constantly requested Watson to accompany him on his cases. Now, of course, When they were rooming together, he would go wake him up, but he would also send telegrams from time to time. An urgent summons. Come at once if convenient. If inconvenient, come all the same. That was from Boscombe Valley Mystery. But Bill tells us there were times when he needed other help than Watson. Maybe some adult men who seemed to live in the borderland between the criminal and the legitimate world. Shinwell Johnson, for example. He was an ex-criminal, and Holmes called him a valuable assistant, acting as his agent in the London underworld. He was large, coarse, red-faced, scorbutic man, but he was of invaluable help to Holmes in the illustrious client. Who else do we have along those lines, those adult helpers, Burton?
Well, Bill writes, Fred Porlock, a nom de plume, was a correspondent from the underworld who supplied Holmes with advance information of Moriarty's activities. And then there was Langdale Pike, a gossip columnist, Holmes's human book of reference on all matters of social scandal. Holmes fed him information and was in turn helped. Mercer was a general utility man for Holmes who looks up routine business. It was interesting that Mercer, Johnson, and Pike only appear in the latter part of Holmes's career, when Watson no longer shared the Baker Street lodgings. That seems to tell us that Holmes needed to fill a void left only by Watson, whose time had become occupied primarily by his married life and his medical practice. To those who belittle Watson's contributions to the partnership, please note it took at least 3 men to replace him. And these men were never referred to, never, as irregulars by Holmes. That term was used to describe a band of street urchins in number from 6 to 12 and captained by a young street Arab named Wiggins. They were Holmes's eyes and ears, particularly in the early days of his career. They could go everywhere, see everything, and overhear everyone without being noticed. Holmes called them the Baker Street Division of the Detective Police Force, an unofficial force, the Baker Street Irregulars.
Now, isn't it interesting? I just want to pause here that these 3 men that it took to replace Watson, they were all of a nefarious sort. He didn't find one good man to replace Watson. He had to have 3 underworld folks or 3 questionable folks to replace him. I don't know what that says, but... And Bill continues, he says, a little noticed Sherlockian fact is that Holmes included himself and Watson as members of the Irregulars. In Lady Frances Carfax, remember, he says to Watson, "Now, Watson, he will set the regular forces on the move. We are, as usual, the Irregulars, and we must take our own line of action." Well, perhaps there's the solution right there, is that Holmes expects those that are not official members of the police force to be a little nefarious, including himself and Watson. Now, of course, the name, the Baker Street Irregulars, was immortalized by Christopher Morley when he used it as the title of the organization. And the leader, Wiggins, takes his name, his title, from the name of the leader of the original group. And the Sage of Santa Fe, as Bill refers to Sherlockian John Bennett Shaw, takes the title Simpson, the name of one of Holmes's Baker Street boys who aided him during the Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, Cartwright, which is the name used by the 3rd member of the BSI triumvirate, was never referred to as an irregular in the canon. He was simply a messenger boy who was employed by a messenger service and loaned to Holmes by the manager, Wilson. And that, of course, is from which story? Hound of the Baskervilles. That was Hound of the Baskervilles, too. So, interesting collection there of irregulars.
However, there's another irregular named in the canon, and although I have never read or heard him referred to so in writings on the writings as an irregular, I give you, as my authority, no less an expert on the irregulars than the master himself. In The Adventure of the Retired Colorman, Holmes speaks to Inspector McKinnon and Watson about a Mr. Barker, a Surrey private detective with whom Holmes has a friendly rivalry. Holmes says of him, his methods are irregular, no doubt like my own. The irregulars are useful sometimes, you know. Well, there you have it. With those words of the master himself, Barker, a tall, dark, stern-looking, heavily mustachioed, military-looking man with gray-tinted glasses and a Masonic tie pin, was received into the most wonderful fellowship on earth.
Interesting.
Isn't that fun?
That is a lot of fun. And we can thank Bill Schweikert for that.
Yeah.
Well, as we promised, we're going to turn to Bob Tomlin, who appeared on episodes 11 and 12 of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Interestingly, if we look back at those early episodes, we probably, if we were running it today, we probably would have just done it as a single episode. We split that interview into two, but the conclusion of our interview with Bob led to him reminiscing about Bill and this poem. So we'll turn it over to Bob for the final word.
I just want to extol this poem just a little bit because it perfectly reflects how we all feel about Sherlock Holmes. It gets right inside your head and your heart, and you just know this is right. I would guess the first 10 or 15 times, or even more than that, I couldn't recite this without tearing up at the end. I could barely voice the last line or two. So this poem that he wrote, A Long Evening with Holmes, it was first delivered at the 1984 edition of Autumn and Baker Street. And I make it a point to, we close every Garadev meeting with it, and I close every Autumn and Baker Street with it. A Long Evening with Holmes by Bill Schweikert. When the world rushes in with its worries and cares, and my problems and headaches are coming in pairs, I just climb in my mind up those 17 stairs and spend a long evening with Holmes. The good doctor greets me and motions me in. Holmes grasps my hand and lays down his violin. Then we sit by the fire and sip a tall gin when I spend a long evening with Holmes. And while we're discussing his cases galore, if I'm lucky, there comes a loud knock at the door. In stumbles a client, head spattered with gore, when I spend a long evening with Holmes. Watson binds up the client's poor face, while Holmes soon extracts all the facts of the case. Then off in a hansom to Brixton we race, when I spend a long evening with Holmes. The adventure is solved. Holmes makes it all right. Then back to the lodgings by dawn's early light, and a breakfast by Hudson to wind up the night, when I spend a long evening with Holmes. So this modern rat race can't keep me in a cage. I have a passport to a far better age, as close as my bookcase, and there on a page I can spend a long evening with Holmes.
And that is just a trifle.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Please join us again next week for another installment of Trifles. Show notes are available on SherlockHolmesPodcast.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and be sure to check out our longer show, I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, where we interview notable Sherlockians and share news of the Sherlockian world.
You've taken my breath away, Mr. Holmes.
At the same time, mobilizing the Baker Street division of the Detective Police Force. In other words, the irregulars.